My girlfriend was behaving oddly during dinner with her best friend. They seemed really close, almost like a couple. When I asked my girlfriend about it, she told me that any potential romantic history between them was over long ago, specifically when she stopped being religious. As a storyteller and script analyst, I've carefully considered the narrative and will provide a more engaging rendition that preserves the original's essence. My relationship with Jordan seemed perfect. A 2-year journey we'd been sharing in our cozy apartment, accompanied by our 2 beloved cats. Until this weekend, I believed we were on an unshakable path, secretly planning to propose within the next year. We'd always been the kind of couple who rarely argued, our personalities blending seamlessly like perfectly matched puzzle pieces. Jordan is genuinely sweet and adaptable, someone who navigates life's complexities with remarkable grace. Our connection had been so smooth and harmonious that the thought of potential complications seemed almost impossible. If our relationship hadn't been so consistently wonderful up to this point, I might have immediately considered ending things. But the history of our near-perfect partnership makes me hesitate, forcing me to question whether my current emotions are leading me to an unfair conclusion. Central to this story is Mark, Jordan's lifelong friend from her hometown. They grew up together in a tight-knit religious community, though Jordan made the bold decision to leave that world when she was 19, relocating to our current state. Mark, in contrast, remains deeply committed to their original religious background, now working directly for the church in their shared hometown. Interestingly, Mark appears to be Jordan's sole remaining connection to her past religious circle, aside from her parents. Reflecting on this now, I'm beginning to see this singular connection as potentially significant, maybe even a warning sign I'd previously overlooked. Our first meeting occurred last Saturday when Mark visited our city. Jordan was eager for us to have dinner together. I'll be honest, when we first started dating, I wasn't thrilled about Jordan having a male best friend, especially given their frequent video calls. My initial discomfort stemmed from typical relationship insecurities. However, understanding they shared a deep childhood friendship and rarely met in person, I chose to trust Jordan completely. Over time, my jealousy transformed into acceptance. By the time of our dinner, I wasn't suspicious at all. In fact, I was genuinely looking forward to meeting the person who had been such a significant part of Jordan's life story. The dinner took a turn that completely shattered my perception of Jordan and Mark's friendship. Their behavior was unlike anything I'd ever witnessed between supposed just friends. The physical and emotional intimacy they shared was painfully obvious to everyone, except perhaps Jordan herself. Their interactions were overwhelmingly intimate. Constant touching, hands brushing against arms, fingers intertwining, shoulders pressed together. They communicated through a language of subtle gestures and shared glances that deliberately excluded me. Every laugh was accompanied by an incredibly close moment, foreheads touching, hands holding, creating an unmistakable bubble of connection that left me feeling utterly invisible. Their eye contact was the most unsettling part. The way they looked at each other spoke volumes, a depth of understanding and emotion that went far beyond friendship. I was convinced that any random observer would assume Mark and Jordan were the couple, with me as some random third wheel or forgotten family member. Jordan, typically so attentive and considerate, seemed completely transformed. Her usual sensitivity vanished, replaced by an almost desperate need for Mark's attention. She was so absorbed in their shared world that she didn't even realize how profoundly uncomfortable and isolated she was making me feel. Unable to bear the tension any longer, I seized a moment when Jordan went to the bathroom to directly confront Mark. "Are you into my girlfriend?" I asked bluntly. Mark's response was cryptic. "That ship sailed a long time ago," he said. When I pressed further, he explained they had never actually dated, but their potential relationship was complicated by Jordan leaving their shared religious community. The conversation took a bizarre turn when I asked hypothetically what would happen if Jordan returned to the church. Mark's dismissive response, comparing it to a bicycle with 6 tires, felt loaded with unspoken meaning. And then, in what seemed like a provocative move, he told Jordan that I had been asking about them potentially getting married if she wasn't a godless heathen. An awkward moment arose when I asked about a phone call to Jordan's mom during my bathroom break. Their shared laughter and quick subject change only intensified my suspicions. Something felt deeply wrong. The dinner had revealed a complicated emotional landscape. I became convinced that Jordan and Mark shared a profound connection that transcended ordinary friendship. Their relationship seemed held back only by religious differences, with Jordan potentially seeing me as a convenient alternative to her true emotional desire. My heart was torn between two conflicting perspectives. On one side, our relationship had been nearly perfect. Jordan had always been incredibly loving and considerate. This strange behavior with Mark was completely out of character, occurring only during his rare physical presence. Normally, even during their frequent conversations, she remained completely attentive to me. I found myself wrestling with challenging questions. Should I end our relationship based on one uncomfortable evening? Or should I trust the years of consistent love and trust we'd built together? The dilemma consumed me. Breaking up seemed like protecting my self-respect, yet it also felt like potentially destroying something genuinely beautiful over a single incident. After careful reflection and conversation with Jordan, perspective shifted. Our discussion revealed layers I hadn't initially understood. Jordan acknowledged the evening's awkwardness and didn't dispute my feelings of being marginalized. However, she provided context that softened my initial harsh interpretation. Critically, I realized jumping to conclusions would be destructive. Our relationship's foundation remained strong. The conversation allowed us to address the uncomfortable dynamics with mutual understanding and commitment to boundaries. My approach was deliberate. I first expressed how deeply hurt I felt during the dinner. This vulnerable, direct communication became the pathway to resolution. By sharing my emotions without accusation, we could explore the situation's complexity together. Our conversation unfolded as a deep, vulnerable exploration of feelings and past experiences. I shared my perspective, highlighting how excluded and invisible I felt during dinner. The way Jordan and Mark had interacted, with constant physical closeness, had made me deeply uncomfortable. Jordan's initial response surprised me. She seemed genuinely unaware of their excessive physical contact, admitting she hadn't realized how touchy they'd been. Mark, she explained, was naturally tactile with everyone, which had made her overlook the intensity of their interactions. What truly bothered me was how uncharacteristically she had behaved. Jordan, typically so perceptive and considerate, seemed entirely transformed in Mark's presence. Her lack of awareness about my feelings made me question the depth of her emotional commitment to our relationship. Recognizing my pain, Jordan offered a heartfelt apology. She emphasized her love for me, assuring me that I was her primary emotional priority. Her explanation revealed a nuanced intention. She had been trying to ensure Mark didn't feel like an outsider, inadvertently creating the opposite effect. Then came a profound revelation about her history with Mark, a story of deep, platonic connection forged through an incredibly challenging life moment. When Jordan was 17, she had attempted suicide, a time when her entire religious community had abandoned her. Mark stood by her side, becoming her sole support system. During those critical years, Mark did more than just offer friendship. He became a lifeline, checking on her daily, ensuring her survival. Their frequent phone calls originated from this period of intense emotional support. This shared experience created a bond that transcended typical friendship, something Jordan described as deeper than a standard friendship, but explicitly not romantic. She was careful with her language, deliberately calling Mark her best friend instead of using familial terms. The only reason she didn't refer to him as a brother was because she had lost her actual brother, a detail that added another layer of emotional complexity to their relationship. An interesting side note emerged about Mark's parents, who had initially assumed romantic involvement between Jordan and Mark, causing additional tension during that vulnerable period. The conversation took an intriguing turn when I shared Mark's hypothetical marriage comment. Jordan's response was immediate and seemingly genuine. She didn't believe Mark was romantically interested in her, despite the complicated history they shared. Her perspective on their potential past was fascinating. Jordan believed that had she remained in the religious community, marriage would have been more a result of social expectations than genuine romantic connection. She saw their hypothetical union as a product of peer pressure rather than true love. Mark's viewpoint, she suggested, was rooted in an idealized vision, imagining her as the perfect church wife without truly understanding her as a complete individual. It was a nuanced interpretation that revealed the depth of her self-awareness and understanding of their relationship's dynamics. The most significant moment came when Jordan voluntarily addressed my discomfort. She mentioned Mark would be passing through our city and asked if I would be okay with him joining us. More importantly, she immediately offered not to invite him if I felt uncomfortable, a gesture that spoke volumes about her commitment to our relationship. This unexpected offer felt like a significant reassurance. Many had suggested that her unwillingness to limit contact with Mark would indicate she valued him more than me. By proactively considering my feelings, Jordan demonstrated a different perspective. I recognized the profound significance of Mark's past support during her most vulnerable teenage years. Their connection, while intense, seemed genuinely rooted in survival and friendship rather than romantic tension. Jordan's immediate apology and transparent explanation gave me hope. While I remained cautious about Mark, I felt I could trust her. My plan was simple: observe their interactions, noting any significant changes in communication frequency or tone. Part 1. Jordan and Mark's relationship. Continuation. I decided to take a balanced approach. I wasn't going to become controlling or demand Jordan limit her friendship with Mark. Instead, I wanted to observe how our conversation might naturally influence their dynamic. There was a possibility that by raising my concerns, Jordan might independently recognize some of Mark's potentially inappropriate behavior. However, I also understood that change might not be immediately apparent. The true test would likely come during Mark's next in-person visit. My strategy was rooted in trust and personal growth. By openly discussing my feelings, I hope to create space for mutual understanding and potential self-reflection. Part 2. Unexpected encounter with ex-friend. Life has a way of presenting unexpected moments of emotional complexity. At 35, happily married with 2 children and expecting a third, I never anticipated running into an old connection from my past. The encounter began ordinarily enough. My wife and I were shopping in our hometown when we unexpectedly met my ex-friend, her parents, and her children. She had moved out of state over a decade ago, with our communication limited to occasional social media birthday wishes. Our interaction started pleasantly. Her father, who knew my father-in-law through their shared military background, congratulated us on the pregnancy. However, I noticed a shift in my ex-friend's demeanor. Her initial friendliness faded after noticing my wife's pregnancy, replaced by a noticeable emotional distance. Later that day, a surprising Facebook message arrived. What began as a casual catch-up request quickly transformed into an emotionally charged confrontation about our past. Her message revealed years of unresolved feelings. "Was I just not your type?" she asked, exposing a vulnerability that had apparently been brewing for years. She spoke of loving me, of how our families and friends had supported our potential relationship, and of feeling that I never fully committed. The message escalated dramatically, diving into deeply personal territories. Her provocative question about our sexual history hung in the air. "You wouldn't even have sex with me, and I need to know why?" The underlying pain and vulnerability were palpable. Unsure how to respond, I showed the messages to my wife. She was familiar with this complicated connection from my past and encouraged honesty, yet something about responding felt potentially cruel. Our history was a tangled web of missed connections and complicated emotions. We met during high school through mutual friends, and my initial interest was immediate. However, she was already in a relationship at the time. Months later, she surprisingly asked me out. We went on dates, shared kisses, but never officially defined our relationship. Our connection existed in an ambiguous space, more than friendship, less than a committed partnership. A pivotal moment came during a car ride. Her boyfriend called, and through snippets of conversation, I realized they were still together. When he discovered our interactions, he contacted me directly. Feeling betrayed, I ended things immediately. Her response was emotionally charged. Tearfully, she claimed she hadn't found the courage to end her existing relationship, but genuinely wanted to be with me. Despite her pleas, I maintained my decision to cut ties. But our story didn't end there. Over the years, a frustrating pattern emerged. She would periodically reappear, expressing interest, always seemingly entangled with another romantic connection. This cycle persisted through college and our early 20s, a seemingly endless dance of near misses and complicated emotions. We even shared a weekend mountain vacation, a trip she had recently taken with another ex. The overlapping romantic narratives created a sense of emotional instability that I found increasingly uncomfortable. What made this situation more complex was the external pressure. Both our families seemed to view us as a perfect match. My parents would casually inquire about her, making comments suggesting they saw our potential future together. Her father apparently spoke fondly of me as a potential son-in-law. My friends had witnessed the pattern of my romantic struggles with this woman. Over the years, I'd confided in them about feeling like a perpetual backup plan or temporary distraction. Their advice was pragmatic, suggesting I should simply enjoy the physical connection without emotional investment. But that approach felt fundamentally wrong to me. I craved something deeper. Every time we seemed close to progressing our relationship, something would inevitably interrupt. A message from another guy, a social media post revealing her ongoing entanglements. These moments didn't just pause our connection, they completely demolished my emotional confidence. One of my closest friends tried to convince me to just have fun without pursuing a serious relationship. But the suggestion felt hollow. I wasn't interested in being a temporary solution or an emotional stopgap. There was something special about our connection. We genuinely clicked in a way that felt rare and meaningful. It felt like the universe was conspiring against our potential. Every time we drew close, some mystical intervention would reveal another romantic complication. I couldn't shake the feeling of being just another option in her complicated romantic landscape. My insecurities were real. I wanted a genuine, committed connection, not a situation where I was constantly wondering about her other potential romantic interests. So, gradually, I began distancing myself. Time passed, we both moved on, met our respective partners, and our lives drifted apart with minimal contact. Then suddenly, years later, this unexpected message arrived, reopening old emotional wounds and unresolved feelings. I hadn't responded to her messages. My wife encouraged complete honesty, suggesting I share the full story. I was conflicted, unsure of the best approach. In a twist of narrative humor, the update played with expectations. A fictional scenario suggested we were leaving our partners to reunite, followed immediately by an April Fool's revelation. The actual outcome was far more mundane. I simply never responded, and my wife suggested blocking her if she messaged again. The Easter egg hunt unfolded on Phil's property, a spacious setting that typically hosted various gatherings. While the presence of non-family members didn't surprise me, I was somewhat taken aback to see A's parents accompanying her children. After the adults strategically scattered eggs for the children's hunt, A's father approached me for casual conversation. Our interaction seemed routine, just two acquaintances exchanging pleasantries and catching up. As our conversation wound down, I casually inquired about the children's arrangements. His response carried unexpected weight. He revealed somewhat guardedly that A and her husband were experiencing relationship difficulties and needed time apart to work through their issues. No specific details were shared, leaving the nature of their troubles deliberately ambiguous. However, his comments seemed to confirm suspicions raised earlier about potential marital stress. The narrative appeared to reach its natural conclusion. A sense of unresolved mystery lingered, with the possibility of future developments should A choose to reach out again.